Morning, everyone. I'm back on my old system. I was getting really tired of the jerkiness of the video and the low quality, so we're going to go back to this. I'll upload directly to YouTube and then maybe stream this video out to the other systems. I think the streaming systems are the future. I think that being streamed out simultaneously among 5 streams like YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, DLive, and whatever else is on there, Twitch. Is probably where I'm going, but until I can have a reliable product, one that I can play videos and do all the stuff that I can do with this simpler setup, then I'm going to use this until the other one's ready to go. And it should be ready to go by next week, but stay tuned. I may stream this video after I've uploaded the high quality one to YouTube and compare. We'll see how that works. Maybe that'll be better. Who knows? But for now, this is the way I'm going to do it. I hope this is higher quality and easier to watch. It's certainly easier to interact with for me because it's instant and I can see that it's recording. So there's no questions and there's nothing else going on. So it's easier for me to focus. Okay, so getting into the news. I saw this yesterday, and the first 39 seconds you should probably just clip off. It's too much talking, and you can tell that it's an impersonator. I saw this on Twitter, and I thought, man, this would be hilarious. And this is a good impersonator with a little bit of a blurry camera, and he's got the voice down and the mannerisms too, which is really good for Cruz. And this whole commercial is hilarious, like totally worthwhile. I wish this were true. Between this and Kanye West, man, what a fun 2020. Okay, here we go. We'll watch this just because this is funny, and we'll get into the news after this. Here we go.
For me, I'm not just your everyman. I've literally been every man. I've been a Navy pilot, a lawyer, and a Navy lawyer. My opponents will say I was a pimp in high school. It's true. But I grew up fast in NASCAR country.
So worth your time. Go watch that link. It's in the description. Okay, here is a history of Justin Trudeau with We Charity. And you're not going to watch this on CBC News or CTV News. They don't care. They don't want to tell you. And I think this is reeks of cronyism, regardless of now the fact that the whole deal is torpedoed. It's done. We backed out. Trudeau said, oh yeah, maybe, it was rolled out wrong. Maybe it was rolled out far too openly, eh? You told us far too much about what your plans were. And we all said, hey, isn't that just a big $900 million giveaway to your buddy? Your friend of 10 years? Here's iPolitics outline. It says timeline. Trudeau's ties to We are as old as his political career. And I scroll down. In 2008, 3 days after Trudeau was elected MP in October, he speaks at the annual We Day event in Toronto, this time in person, urging the crowd to participate in politics. As an MP, Trudeau was appointed assistant critic for youth. I scroll down again. So that was 2008. 2015, after a whole bunch of appearances between him and his family, Sophie Gregory Trudeau, Margaret Trudeau, his mother, and Trudeau himself multiple times, and interacting as well with Craig and Mark Kielburger. In 2015, as Prime Minister, Trudeau addressed a 16,000 person We Day audience alongside Sophie in Ottawa in November, his first public speech after becoming Prime Minister. And the Minister for Youth, in a 2015 interview with the Ottawa Citizen, Craig Kielburger calls Trudeau a friend and someone he's known for more than a decade. And yeah, 2005, the timeline lines up. The first appearance at We for Trudeau was a few days after his son was born, and he appeared by video conference in 2007. So that lines up as far as knowing somebody, and that's not illegal. But what's problematic is the optics of that, right? Like the Prime Minister giving away nearly $1 billion to a charity and saying that the government couldn't possibly handle doling out money in an effective way to youth. The only entity in Canada is this We Charity. My friend Craig Kielburger. Isn't that interesting? I think that it's very concerning with regards to our government, with regards to cronyism, with regards to good spending of Canadian tax dollars, good jurisdiction. No, that's the wrong word. Shepherding. It's all the wrong word of the Canadian tax dollars in trust of the government, and it looks like what's more important is giving their buddy a big payout rather than taking care of students. The teachers would make $12,000. The highest grant level that the students could get was $5,000. And the logistics of the program, getting that many volunteers, impossible in the timeline. Like impossible to vet the volunteers, to interview the volunteers. Like it is a lot of people, and leaning on teachers to do that is a conflict of interest, right? Like as far as contacting the students outside of school to participate in a volunteer program to encourage them and then to mentor them, that's not appropriate. That goes against the teacher's professional guidance, there's a professional body of teachers that has points on it that in order to have your teaching license you have to comply with. Contacting students outside of school for activities outside of school, regardless of the intention, regardless of the government incentive, is a big no-no. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. You can't do that. Professional misconduct. It's really concerning. It's not well thought out. The money itself adds up to about $40 million. So where's the $900 million going? Maybe my math is wrong, but I did the math the other day. The math was wrong the first time. Second time, not so much. But it just seems improper on so many levels. So the fact that Trudeau thought he could get away with this is just reeks of arrogance, right? Reeks of arrogance. Okay, moving on. From we, and the CBC desperately wants to move on from we. The CTV wants to move on from we. They don't want to talk about it. They'd much rather you forget about it and talk about something else, right? So, I mean, we are going to talk about something else because this is a show and I've got to talk about all the links, all the news. Here we go. Toronto Star is talking about masks being mandatory in Toronto. Now, masks have been mandatory in Guelph since the 10th of June, and I've been getting side eyes since then because I don't wear masks when I go out. And, well, I'll show you the reasons why in a minute, but I think everybody's seen those. Now, there's two kinds of videos going around. There's one kind of video with oxygen sensors, and they put the oxygen sensor in the mask, and the oxygen sensor invariably goes up. Well, because you're exhaling directly onto it, and the oxygen is being held within the mask, and then you're inhaling from that too. So when the oxygen sensor is reading a very high oxygen environment, then the video person says, see, there you go, like proof positive that this is dangerous for you, you shouldn't do it. And the other type of video is somebody who's wearing a mask and says, I wear masks all the time, I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, I have to wear PPE for my work and all this other stuff. And they put the blood oxygen monitor on their finger and they say, see, you know, it's not going down at all, whatever. And usually these videos are relatively short. They're like 3 minutes or less. And I don't know how long it takes for the oxygen in your blood to be depleted. I'm not a doctor, I really don't. And I don't know if the criticisms of the mask videos where they've got the oxygen sensor in the mask are accurate. I don't know. It's hard to find that information on Google. When you search Google for that kind of stuff, you just get page after page after page of propaganda of people who are talking about the same talking points that you hear that I just described. Either the mask is giving you a high oxygen or a high CO2 environment, and they're measuring that. That's what this is, the measurement tool. That's why I'm doing this. Or the other one is the oxygen sensor, right? So I don't know what's true. When you try and dig into it, it's really difficult to find articles that are believable, right? Because either they're repeating the talking points, which is not great, because when you're just repeating talking points, it sounds like propaganda, or the studies are saying the opposite, that yes, masks have potential, and if the mask makes you feel like lightheaded, take it off, and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's all sorts of stuff, and multiple different environments, so like medical environments, and in fire environments, and in drywalling environments, and in like any like if you're painting or something like that, if you're using the N95 to make sure you don't inhale paint, it says if you feel lightheaded, don't do this, it's dangerous, you could get hurt. But they're not saying that in these, right? It's all shaming people for not wearing masks. So it's really notable. Like, it's really notable. If you pick up a mask, it says if you feel lightheaded, right? There's a warning. If you try and find out who's lying or who's telling the truth, does a mask create the high oxygen environment that then maybe creates negative medical outcomes, lung infections, fungal infections that I'm going to talk about in a minute? Or are the other people right? And these are N95 masks. The fabric masks, the non-medical masks, the cloth masks have a whole other issue that nobody talks about. They say the cloth masks and the N95 masks are interchangeable. That's not true either. And so there's so much misinformation out there that the Google machine has been rendered almost useless, right? Because they're trying to spam the keywords, and they do, and because Google's on board with it, They're cool. They're cool with it because, well, you know what a Google update is, right? Like sometimes e-commerce stores and sometimes other stores get hit by a Google update and they lose their traffic and they have to fix it. These are things that happen to other things too. But if Google's on board with your ideology, then they can update their algorithm however they see fit. Back to the Toronto wearing masks. Okay, here is the June 30th report. The new temporary bylaw was approved at a meeting Tuesday and will come into force next week. That's, I think, today or tomorrow. It will require the person or organization who owns or is responsible for the operation of a facility or business to have a policy to ensure masks or face coverings be worn by the public in the enclosed public spaces under their control, subject to some exemptions. Toronto's bylaw is meant to make masks mandatory in businesses like grocery stores and will not apply to children under 2 or people who can't wear masks for medical reasons. This proposed measure makes sense from a health perspective, and it makes sense from a business perspective, Mayor John Tory said at a morning news conference at City Hall. Dr. Eileen Davila, the city's medical officer of health, said they've seen that making masks mandatory improves compliance and that though there is greater risk of COVID-19 transmission in enclosed spaces, wearing masks helps to prevent virus spread. I wear my cloth mask to protect you and you wear one to protect me, she said at Tuesday's press conference. Here is a Science Daily article from 2015 that says cloth masks are dangerous to your health? ? The widespread use of cloth masks by healthcare workers may actually put them at an increased risk of respiratory illness and viral infections, and their global use should be discouraged, according to a UNSW study. The results of the first randomized clinical trial, RTC, to study the efficacy of cloth masks was published in the journal BMJ Open. The trial saw 1607 hospital healthcare workers across 14 hospitals in the Vietnamese capital Hanoi, split into 3 groups: those wearing masks, those wearing cloth masks, and a control group based on usual practices, which included mask wearing. Workers were using the masks on every shift for 4 consecutive weeks. The study found respiratory infection was much higher among healthcare workers wearing cloth masks. The penetration of cloth masks by particles was almost 97% compared to the medical masks with 44%. So cloth masks. Now, that's not great. And I understand, again, that the idea is that you're supposed to be protecting yourself or protecting others by limiting the droplets that you potentially spread. But here's another article. That's not the one. Hold on, let me find it. Okay, here's Dr. Eric Topol. Sorry, I thought it was. Anyway, regardless. He's a physician, scientist, author, editor, and he's tweeting, encouraging new commentary about the very small risk of surface formite transmission of SARS-CoV-2. And it says the longest survival, 6 days of the headline, is exaggerated risk of transmission of COVID-19 by formites, a clinically significant risk of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, SARS-CoV-2, transmission by formites, inanimate surface or objects, has been assumed on the basis of studies that have little resemblance to real-life scenarios. The longest survival, 6 days of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus on surfaces, was done by placing a very large initial virus tetra sample, 10 squared, infectious virus particles on the surface being tested. I scroll down. None of the studies presented scenarios akin to real-life situations, although I did not find measurements of coronavirus quantities and aerosol droplets from patients. By contrast, one study found human coronavirus to survive only 3 hours and human coronavirus to survive 1 hour after dying on various surfaces, including aluminum, sterile latex, surgical gloves, and sterile sponges. No viable SARS-CoV-2 was detected on surfaces. Only the applicable. I'll scroll down. In my opinion, the chance of transmission through inanimate surfaces is very small, and only in instances where an infected person coughs or sneezes on the surface and someone else touches that surface soon after the cough or sneeze. And he says, I do not disagree with erring on the side of caution, but this can go to extremes not justified by the data. I believe that formites that have not been in contact with an infected carrier for many hours do not pose a measurable risk of transmission in non-hospital settings. A more balanced perspective is needed to curb excess that becomes counterproductive. So this doctor is saying that there is very little risk of infection from picking it up from droplets. So if somebody sneezes into their shoulder or into their elbow, then potentially they're not sneezing directly onto the box of cereal or the subway rail holding thing or whatever it is. And maybe wearing masks will cut down on some infection. But everything that I've read says that cloth masks are really not great. So it's really interesting to see first Guelph and then the other cities come together and have health professionals saying stuff like, I wear my cloth mask to protect you and you wear your one to protect me. That's just not true. Back to this. The city solicitor said in a report to council Tuesday that the province would be in the best position to mandate the wearing of non-medical masks by the general public under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, but that the city had the legal authority to make requirements for health and safety if recommended by Toronto Public Health. The solicitor, Wendy Wahlberg, told council that there is some question about the medical officers of Health's authority to order something that applies to all residents and looks like legislation. She said in the absence of the province stepping in, she recommended council approve a bylaw. A similar bylaw was expected to pass in Peel Region later this week, officials announced Tuesday. At Queen's Park, Premier Doug Ford praised Toronto and Peel Region for their moves. If you're in large groups, wear a mask, wear a face covering of some sort, and practice social distancing. That's the golden rule, said Ford. Re-election? Is there another party to vote for that's not liberal and not liberal light? Back to this. It's apples and oranges, so each region has the authority to make their own rules, and a province this size, I encourage it, and I encourage and compliment the regions that are doing it, be it Toronto and Peel. But Toronto and Peel are different than Kenora or Rainy River, he said. It's apples and oranges, so each public health area will have the authority to put in either two ways. Either they do it through Section 22 of the Health Act, which is what's happening in Guelph, or they do it through the bylaw and go to council, which Toronto has done. Masks have already been made mandatory on TTC starting July 2nd. The use of masks on the TTC will not be enforced, officials have said. As for penalties, Tory said he didn't think there would be enforcement blitzes, and staff noted Tuesday that it would be a difficult law to enforce across the city. Potential fines have not yet been set. Just last week, both Tory and De Villa questioned whether Toronto had the legal ability to mandate mask use as Guelph did. And here's a quick update on the Guelph situation. This is June 12th, July 12th. This is next week. Order on mandatory masks updated by Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health to provide specifics. So they've here's the exemptions. A person shall be exempt from wearing a face covering on the premises if the person is a child under 2, wearing a face covering would inhibit the person's ability to breathe in any way, and for other medical reasons, the person cannot safely wear a face covering, such as, but not limited to, respiratory disease, cognitive difficulties in hearing or processing information. And they go down here and they say establishment. So parts of the establishment covered by the order, parts of the establishment exempt from the order. So the other week I was in Zayres, and not the usual Zayres that I go to, but we went upstairs to the bathroom, and this is before the 12th, but it may have been after the 12th. And there were a bunch of employees not wearing masks. And as I understood the order at that point in time, and the order that I was looking at was this one, that every business needed to ensure that every person in their business needed to have a face covering at all times. And so people come up to me, and at this point, a manager came up to me and informed me of the $5,000 fine. And I said, that fine would be for you, and it doesn't apply as I'm exempt under, there are 3 exemptions, and I'm exempt under 2 of them. And he just looked upset at me, which happens, it's fine. And he got more upset and said, basically that I didn't care about the public. And I said, that's not true. I just care about my health. And it's very interesting how people's approach to people who aren't wearing a mask has changed over the last couple of days and last couple of weeks as well. I was in 7-Eleven yesterday, and somebody said, do you not realize that it's mandatory to wear masks in Guelph? And I said, yeah, I understand that. I said, there's 3 exemptions and 2 of them apply to me. He said, you better get a mask. You're in Guelph. I said, I get that, but there's exemptions to the public order. He said, no, there's not. I said, you should read the public order. And then he just looked angry at me, but I couldn't see his face. So it was like this. Okay, for anybody not watching, I was just making angry eyes. So I have a really hard time. And here's the whole paper, if you're interested in reading the whole thing, linked in the description. I have a really hard time with things like this. Posted July 5th, today's the 6th. A woman took to Twitter to express her displeasure with Toronto hospital staff doing their jobs, but it hasn't quite gone the way she was hoping. A woman draws criticism online for refusing to wear a mask inside a Toronto hospital. But there are exemptions. She should have been able to articulate, there are exemptions to this order that apply to me. Please see to my medical need. You are a hospital. Really strange, really, really strange. Anyway, the video, which was posted on Saturday around 11:14 p.m., showed medical staff at St. Joseph's Hospital denying her treatment for a broken finger because she refused to wear a mask. The staff could be heard on the video telling the woman that the Ministry of Health has a policy to not treat anyone unless they're wearing a face covering. And they link the policy. I didn't see anything about denying service for a face covering. I read through this whole thing, and maybe I missed it. It's possible I missed it, but I read through this whole thing and I didn't see anything. It talked about the healthcare workers' access to their own PPE, but it didn't talk about patients necessitating to cover up. So I hope this woman has, I'm sure she would have a case. I'm sure she would have some kind of legal recourse. But the problem with that is if you break your finger, you don't think to yourself, I'm going to sue that hospital so bad. You just want your finger fixed. You want somebody to go, that's awful. Here's the thing that we do for this. Cast it up, go home, feel better. Here's your prescription. You don't want to have to deal with this. This is annoying. This is outside of the norm. This is an obstacle, right? Like this is your driving machine has broken down and you don't know what to do, right? You need to call a tow truck. You need to sort out a bigger problem than you initially had. Initially, you were going to work. That was the biggest problem you had that day, and now your car's broken, right? Initially, you broke your finger and you wanted to have your fingers tended to, and all of a sudden you're being escorted out by 3 security guards because you maybe have an exemption from this public order, and the healthcare workers inaccurately believe that masks are mandatory for everyone under every circumstance, and that's not true. You need to arm yourself. You need to say magic words such as, there are 3 exemptions and 2 of them apply to me. Magic. They go away. They have to go away. Those are exemptions. They're real. They matter. Here's another one. Police charged 2 Americans for breaking Canada's mandatory quarantine order. Fines were set at $1,000. They stopped at a couple of places on their way, wherever they were. 66-year-old David Sipple and 65-year-old Ann Sipple have been charged with failure to comply with an order prohibiting or subject to any condition the re-entry into Canada, and contrary to Section 58 of the Quarantine Act. There you go. Enjoy your vacation. Ontario courts are set to reopen, and they're hoping to be fully open by November. This is a CTV News report. It says Ontario courts will resume in-person proceedings today after being shuttered for months due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All weekend, I saw nonstop articles about how lawyers are trying to shut this down. It's against people's rights to make them go to court because they might get sick. Blah blah blah. All sorts of crazy stuff. And it's crazy. Like, the death rate is declining. This is going away, just like SARS went away, like just like Spanish flu goes away. Like, this is not nearly what it looked like at the beginning. And the fact that politicians aren't caught up to that, and the policies are getting more restrictive as this goes on, is not the right direction. It's not. Here's CTV being racist. CTV News says virus, Floyd death merge in brutal blow to black well-being. Here's 13 saying they're called people. CTV driving that race wedge deeper and deeper, right? Deeper and deeper. It's unbelievable. Here's Global News lying. To date, Donald Trump has never been in front of a camera with a face covering. They tweeted that out on July 4th. This person, Patrick, proved them wrong on July 5th. You're fake news, Global. Here it is. There's Donald Trump wearing a face mask. I mean, it's not like he does a lot for his brand, right? Like, he wears a suit all the time. He wears the long red tie all the time. He's got a visual brand. He does that on purpose. That's not a mistake, and he's done it his entire business life. And love him or hate him, I mean, he's effective at what he does, right? This is an insane story. The people who are the Black Lives Matter protesters who meandered into the middle of a freeway and then got summarily run over by an Iridian driver. And I heard rumors that he was fleeing police, and another one that he stopped to help, but then a mob attacked him, and so he drove away. Either one is believable. I have no idea what was happening here. I saw the video. It didn't look like he was driving safe when he merged onto the highway. But all of that, it could be the fact it was 1 a.m. Who knows how old this person is? Who knows how good a driver they are, right? So like I watched the video and I try not to watch people die. Really, I really do. I try and avoid that. But I saw the video and I was like, wow, like it was shocking. It was very fast. And in the middle of the night with people wearing black, how are you supposed to see that? There's no intent there. Like there's no intent. And the way that CTV News is spinning this, like protesters killed on Seattle freeway were dedicated to their cause. Yeah, so dedicated they gave their lives. Like just so crazy. And like in the stupidest way possible. Like standing in the middle of a freeway. Didn't your parents tell you not to play in the road? People will get run over. Cars win every time. I tell my son and my daughter that all the time. What wins? A car every time. The last story for this morning. Toronto's speed cameras begin issuing tickets today. Photo radar was a big hot button issue in the late 1990s, and I'm pretty sure it's illegal. Isn't this photo radar? I'm pretty sure this is photo radar. So isn't this illegal? I was going to look into this, but I've got a lot of other stuff to do. I'm really busy this morning. So I think this is illegal. And it shouldn't happen. That's the end of the show this morning. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, day.